All right, well, we should probably get started. Hopefully we'll have a few more people show up as we do get going. So we have everybody stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and the recommendation of a few members of the last meeting, public comments at the start of the meeting. So I don't know that there are any public comments tonight, but there may be.
I do have one.
Yes, Dennis.
Dennis Hennon, Berkeley. I noticed behind the community center, a house was they took down a lot of trees behind one of them. And though since they were grinding the stump, it doesn't look like they're going to demolish the whole house, but would encourage looking out for opportunities to buy those properties if they come for sale, because that then gives you more room for a footprint for the community center, especially if they're willingly leaving. Then there's no problem kicking them out because they've chosen to leave. So just something to keep in mind.
Thank you very much. All right, we have some guests here from Stantech to give us a presentation on potential land uses for the community center, the ice arena. Before they get started, we'll thank them for the nice treats they brought with them. Thank you very much, guys. Great. Thank you. We appreciate that, and with that, we'll let you guys take over.
All right. So just a quick recap on who Stantech is, and I'm Justin Weaver. I'm project manager with my team. You won't see me much after this because I'll be on the side. They've done a lot of the work. I just get to be the spokesperson for them. So Stantech, we moved into the Berkeley community in 2003. We're stationed down on Coolidge. We're in walking distance. We actually walk to many of our meetings. It's an architecture and engineering firm. Locally, we're about 70 people, but worldwide, we're 22,000 people. We focus on bringing expertise to the communities we serve. And that's why it's very dear to our hearts. We're in the community. We want to give the best that we can for you. So part of that is our team, Patrick Kelman, planner, Lisa Kolochek, designer, and John Davids, architect. And we're going to go over several options of what we saw could be used for the Berkeley Parks and Rec facility. So I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the team.
While you're firing that up, I understand they have a lot of information to get through tonight, so I suggest maybe we take notes and hold questions till the end to let them get through as much material as they can.
Shazam.
Let's see. Possible.
You need a 15-year-old.
This is every meeting I have questions.
At first. Full screen? Okay.
So we spent the last few months kind of diving into this site and into the options for how we might locate facilities on the site. And so we're going to take you through, as Justin mentioned, kind of 6 options. We started with our proposal was for 4, but through meetings with the community, with the leaders, we saw that there were a couple of sub-options we want to look at too in terms of what kind of pool, indoor versus outdoor, because there's greatly different costs on construction and operations for those kind of facilities. So we're going to kind of run you through. We kind of started out with establishing some kind of broad goals for the project that we thought were important for the community. So the first thing was to test fit a variety of locations and facilities and parking to determine what we can reasonably accommodate on this site. And Lisa will go into a whole lot more detail about the specifics of the site in terms of challenges and opportunities on each of the schemes or each of the options. So one of the other goals, we wanted to really, one of the issues with the community center and the ice arena right now is it's in a neighborhood and it's kind of hard to find for people, and it's nice to have more visibility for something like that. So we're looking at ways to maximize the visibility and also to minimize the traffic noise on the bordering streets. Try to get traffic on more major streets and out off of Sunny Knoll and off of other streets that aren't really as well suited for it. And then obviously a big thing always with these facilities is parking, is the right mix of parking for events so that when you're doing shared events, you've got enough parking for things in the community center or the ice arena or a pool or tennis courts or the stadium, all these kind of things that can compete for parking. So we took a look at kind of critically what the highest use of those were and what kind of parking requirements there would be for those facilities. And then the big thing on this site, as you'll see, is the 12 Towns drain that runs straight north and south right through the middle and bisects the site. And there's a lot of restrictions on what you can do on that area. No permanent structures, so there's that kind of limits some of the things we can do and maybe presents other opportunities, but certainly has challenges on the site as well.
And I'm going to go into more detail about the site itself and some of the limitations. So you can see here is existing Harley Field and Anderson Middle School. And those are very good things for the site because people are already drawn to this area. People know where it is. And with the existing ice arena right here, it's already a place where Berkeley knows. Also, neighbors are used to the activity here, so even if we kept facilities in the same location, people that live there are already used to the traffic and high volume. And it's also, there's opportunity for development, as was mentioned at the beginning, of additional houses. But there are a lot of challenges with the site. Like John mentioned, the 12-Town drain runs right down the middle. And that's a 50-foot wide easement that we can't build on top of, so it kind of separates us into two parcels. And those parcels are very long and narrow, which gives a support aspect ratio, which means the buildings themselves have to be long. So it would kind of limit the footprint that we could build. Another thing, again, was poor visibility. Catalpa, overflow parking does bleed out into the neighborhood. We would like to limit that. There are also, with the parking requirements, would be a potential loss of the existing tennis courts here, the 6 tennis courts to the north. Okay. We'll move on to the program requirements.
So one of my backgrounds is in recreational design, so I've done a lot of community center and ice arena projects. And so we wanted to kind of, it's important to kind of realize the relative size of, for example, a 2-court gym versus an ice arena versus kind of a pool, indoor-outdoor pool, because they all have different kind of implications on the site in terms of how you plan the building. So we wanted to kind of show you a 2-court gym, kind of how big that is, 13,000 square feet, an indoor track, 4,000 square feet, which would normally go around the gym, right, and has a big hole in the middle of it. So that's kind of what that might look like. Smaller gym in some cases, indoor turf room. One of the things at the existing ice arena that you guys get a lot of utility out of is that extra turf facility. Then also, fitness center for cardio and weight equipment, dance studio, all these kind of spaces that are very typical in terms of a community/recreation center. So it's for passive things as well as active things, right? That's the kind of mix we have for the community normally. And then in terms of ice arena, studio ice is very good to have, a full-size rink, seating, lobby, all the kind of backstage spaces and team rooms. And then a pool, outdoor pool versus indoor pool, bathhouse if you have indoor pool or outdoor pool facilities. So these are kind of relative sizes that you'll see reflected in these diagrams and these graphics that you'll see. And then the other real big thing on the sites is in terms of parking. So you'll see these options go from kind of, I call it maybe baby bear scheme. Bear's a good thing in Berkeley, right? So baby bear to mama bear to papa bear. So they kind of start small and get kind of bigger as we go along, right? And they all have different implications for parking. So if you've got a gymnasium that you're using for a banquet on a Friday night, and you've got a hockey arena that you're using for a big game on a Friday night, right? You need to kind of think about how that parking gets shared. And unfortunately, these facilities have a lot of the same simultaneous kind of use. It's not like the school kids are there during the day and someone else is there during the night. So we've got to look at them all together. So the parking, as you can see, takes up a huge footprint on a site. And we really want to kind of keep the parking limited or to our site and not have it spilling out of the neighborhood. So we're doing our best to accommodate parking for the kind of baby bear scheme all the way up to kind of the papa bear scheme, which kind of doubles the amount of parking you need for these things. And then so we've just kind of listed the different program areas that we've kind of included in here in the different aspects of the project: community center, ice arena, outdoor and indoor pool. So those are all to the same scale to kind of show you the relative size. And I think, Lisa, you want me to start with this, right? So again, starting with kind of the baby bear scheme, would be a 40 to 55,000 square foot community recreation center. And that would be a double gym, a running track, weight fitness area, turf room, locker rooms, lobby, all the kind of things. And this is about the same size as a lot of the buildings I've done. It's very typical, like little pure recreation centers, around 56,000 square feet. So it's kind of in that same ballpark what communities normally do for these kind of facilities. And again, here, trying to get this out onto Catalpa to have more visibility, and also to try to get ingress and egress from the site off Catalpa, so you're not going in through the neighborhood as much, is one of the goals we would have. This would relocate tennis courts. Again, we could build the center here and keep the parking here, but this gives us better location in terms of visibility. So this would have the added cost of then building the 6 new tennis courts, maybe in a quieter part of the site that might be a better fit in that part of the neighborhood. And this scheme then would accommodate all of the parking required, because we really don't have an ice arena in this case. So in order to accommodate the parking for these facilities, we have enough room here to accommodate that.
And another thing to point out here is that with the drain and easement, we could build like a road or green space over it, just not a permanent structure. So in this case, the parking would be like connected throughout the site. And so the scheme 1A, or option 1A, shows the community center moving up to Catalpa. So we also showed option 1B, putting the community center where the current ice arena is, and therefore saving the 6 existing tennis courts. Again, there's plenty of space for parking here. There's also extra room for green space to move to the community center. But it does have its own challenges, because it is still kind of back in the pocket of the neighborhood, and it would be more of a challenge to maneuver cars through the site. And then moving on from option 1, which is only the community center, we move to option 2, which is the ice arena and the community center. And we showed the community center up on Catalpa, again, for increased visibility, because in this situation, we have a parking deficit. And you can see these hatched areas. This includes parking over the easement, so it kind of crowds things a bit. But we're still short about 6,000 square feet of parking. This would demolish and then build a new ice arena, which would bring the ice arena up to current codes and standards. It would make it a modern facility. It would also increase efficiency, so the operations costs would be, again, modern standards.
One thing you'll notice on this option, or any of the options that have the community center and an ice arena, is there really is no opportunity for a shared lobby between the two. Johnny probably can explain it best.
Yeah, and there's, honestly, with an ice arena community center, it's not a great fit always to have a shared lobby, because you've got skaters coming in with cold weather clothes, and it's a different kind of lobby than a community center. So normally you have kind of 2 different areas anyway, but there is some opportunities for shared restrooms and things like that, but it's not as great as you might think. It wouldn't be like for a rec center and another facility that wasn't a cold, like an ice arena. But there are, in some cases, opportunities for that. And I think the big challenge here is now we've taken up more footprint with buildings, obviously, so there's less room for tennis courts and parking. So we have to lose all the tennis courts in order to accommodate parking, and we still have a deficit of parking. Not a huge deficit like some of the other options you'll see, but there's a shortage of parking to do this. And again, it's a lot of it's very site specific because of the 12 town stream. There's just, we can't build across that, and it's gonna separate the site in 2.
And now we'll move on to option 3. Option 3 is a community center and a pool, and we've explored both an outdoor and indoor pool option, and so this would be the footprint roughly for both of them. And option 3A shows the community center again up at Catalpa, with the pool sharing a lot of facilities with the community center. So things like locker rooms, a lobby, mechanical space. These are areas that would be incorporated between the both of them, shared between the both of them. And again, here we're relocating some tennis courts, but we're dropping from 6 to 4 to accommodate all the parking. But the parking fits nicely over here, just one large parking lot. Yes, anything else to add?
Yeah, and this starts to get to a little bit better organization of the site because the parking, whenever you split parking into different areas, you lose some efficiency because you have to have more service roads and stuff around it. So this is kind of very efficient in terms of creating parking and then creating entrances on the east side of the buildings. And it's also a nice relationship. So the community center, if it has an indoor pool, would have locker rooms on the south, that you would have a dry side on the gym on the north side and a wet side on the south side. And if it's an outdoor pool, it could be a bathhouse that could be either attached or detached from the building. So that leaves us some good opportunities for how those get organized on the site. And again, we have the visibility off Catalpa, which is nice, and ingress and egress off Catalpa. So this starts to get to be pretty well organized and gets everything you need to accommodate this much program space and the parking for it.
And 3B shows the community center where the current ice arena is, again, to save the tennis courts, but like option 3A, we could only preserve 4. So there would still be some work that needs to be done on those tennis courts, like refencing, lighting, things like that. And again, the community center is kind of tucked in the pocket, so there would have to be improved signage on Catalpa to get people there. And we are short on parking spaces if we save these 4 tennis courts. It's just the way, because there's a gap and not a continuous lot like 3A, it just comes out to being short about 9,000 square feet.
Yeah, we kind of, like I said, we originally had 4 options, and then we said, well, these options, whether the pool's indoor or outdoor, we should look at sub-variations in both cases because there's a huge difference, especially in operational costs. An indoor pool, you're operating year-round, has more great revenue potential because people come there in January and February, but the operational costs are so much greater because you're not just treating and chlorinating water, you're also treating air, so the operational costs in the indoor pool are much higher, the opportunities for revenue are higher as well. It's a real different animal than an indoor pool. It's an outdoor pool.
And finally, option 4, which includes the community center, a pool, and an ice arena. So it's a lot of program on one site, and so we have a very large deficiency in parking spaces, about 45,000 square feet. And so there are a lot of challenges on this site. We have to demolish existing tennis courts. There's inadequate parking on the site, and to incorporate another 150 spaces, we would probably have to have a parking structure or something like that. More urban scale parking solutions.
Okay, so these are basically the diagrams you just saw, just for reference, partially to help me while I'm going through some of the cost implications, and also just so we've got these available for questions. When we look at option 1A, and again, this is focusing on community center only, no ice, no pool. And you'll see there are groupings here on the costs. Project cost, and this is to construct the building, to do the site work, fees, basically everything for the complete project to be finished. It's going to run somewhere between 13 and 17 million to do that. Again, these are budgetary estimates very early on. We know the construction industry right now is a bit unpredictable, but we wanted this to be something that was clear and showed a sense of scale between these options. So to do the community center and the site between 13 and 17 million, looking at annual maintenance costs of about 550,000, 556, with an annual revenue of about 550. Looking at option 1B, which would essentially move the community center to the corner near Oxford. Because we would be keeping the tennis courts, the price drops slightly, about 12.5 million to about 16.5 million, in that range. Everything else stays about the same. Looking at option 2, when a new ice arena is added in, it jumps up to kind of the next tier here, 21.5 to 26.5 million, give or take. And again, that handles all the site costs. We're looking at, when you add in that ice arena, you about double your, actually slightly more than double your annual maintenance cost to about 1.1 million. But again, your revenue goes up equally. Your assumption of about 1.1 million as well. When you add in the pool, this is where you can get some sizable variations here, and it's really driven, as Johnny said, by whether it's an indoor pool or an outdoor pool. The cost to build community center pool, no ice arena, 19.5 to 24.5 million. To go with an indoor pool, you're looking at maintenance costs of about 1.1 million, revenue of about 930. So you can see there's a bit of an imbalance there. If you go to an outdoor pool, the cost to construct is less, 17.2 to 23.5 million, with an assumed annual maintenance cost of about 780,000 and revenue of about 730. So you get much closer. Option 3B, which essentially, where am I, option 3, which essentially just relocates that program, keeps those tennis courts. Costs are all really pretty much the same. You save a little by not having to move all the tennis courts. The operational costs really fall into the same category as well. And then looking at option 4, kind of the full menu there, test fit, you are looking, if that was the direction, 26.5 to 32.7 million. Annual maintenance costs and annual maintenance costs with the indoor pool of about 1.7 million, revenue of about 1.5. If you go to an outdoor pool, it takes about 2 million off of all those numbers, to 24.7 to 32. And your annual maintenance costs and your revenue even out at 1.3 million, so it's somewhat revenue neutral. So essentially that gives you kind of those 3 big categories and a sense of easy fit to challenging fit on that existing property. With that, I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, maybe I'll say a word about the revenues too, is that most communities look at these facilities as kind of a quality of life issue, and they realize they're not profit generators. They're usually, there's something dedicated from the budget to kind of offset operational costs. So I think through good design and good planning, you can reduce that gap, but most communities don't self-fund these, they don't collect enough, because they don't want to charge fees that are so high that they're competing with private, with private organizations. They want something families can afford, and they realize that it's a quality of life issue. And then also in terms of operational costs, like I said, on indoor pool, the revenues are higher, but the operational costs are so much higher. I think most communities find it easier to offset costs on an outdoor pool with a lower revenue and lower operating cost than it is for the indoor pool. So that's a little more challenging usually. Yeah.
What were the assumptions that you used for the revenue for either the ice arena or the pool? Do you know offhand?
We have it here. So the outdoor pool revenue is based on annual memberships. So a family of 4 is $302 a year. Ice arena revenue rental fee is $240 per hour, used for 2,386 hours per year, open 8 months a year.
That was based on communities that are by us and what they charge. So like the pool, that's around what Huntington Woods charges.
Yep.
Okay.
That's how we got the comparison. And the ice arena is what Birmingham charges. We're just trying to be somewhat comparative with local communities.
And this is an imperative part of this, as you're aware of the condition of the current ice arena, the condition of the current community center, your revenue and your maintenance costs, you'll have a more positive flow earlier as the building ages, especially indoor pools. As the building ages, the maintenance costs will go up. It is beneficial to take that into account, make sure you have a fund available to deal with those issues. Just this year, Huntington Woods had to do an emergency boiler replacement on their pool. The high school with their indoor pool is having HVAC issues that have caused damage to the exterior walls. So it's it's making sure you're also taking into account that over the lifespan of these buildings, those maintenance costs will go up and will require an investment to bring them back into line, and then they'll go up. So it's a bit of a sawtooth pattern on expenses.
And it's also important to think about the facilities. What municipal centers have learned from the private sector folks is to set some money aside to improve these facilities. So the indoor water park, for example, something as simple as a new tilting bucket, that might cost you $50,000 can completely change people's opinions of the pool, and it's a new pool to some people. So it's also important to kind of update things, and also recreational programming changes so much. You look what happened to racquetball courts, for example, all the kind of things they went through. So it's important to always have the idea in your head that you're going to maybe need to make some changes to the gym, the fitness area, the pool over time to kind of freshen the building up and bring new people in as well. No, that's okay.
Can you tell me what your source was for potential revenue? How you calculated potential revenue on each of these line items?
Sure, for which
option?
category, yeah.
Pardon me?
Which category, like which one?
What was the source for the information to begin with?
So for example, the outdoor pool, those are Huntington Woods numbers that we used for that. Again, that was what we thought was the easiest comparison. The ice arena is, again, Birmingham's ice arena. And the community center is our own current costs that we have related to
Is this
community center.
existing cash flows or projected cash flows?
These are true numbers of what their revenues and expenses, actual numbers are as of June 30, 2016. We asked them to provide the latest and greatest numbers for us. Did that answer your question?
Not really, but.
To follow up on Tim's question.
Okay, sorry.
For instance, the outdoor pool revenue assumption at $180,000, $320 or $302 membership for a family of four. So I think he was kind of getting, that's 562 families, right?
Right.
So where did we come up with 562 families?
Oh, sure. So we would have said, so Huntington Woods would have said their revenue last year was $180,000. We looked at their membership rates, which obviously varies by type of membership that you have, and just tried to come up with an average just to paint a picture of, say the average family is four, and the cost of that is $302 per year for an annual membership. So we're just trying to guesstimate what we think it's going to be, just to get a feel for it.
Based on actuals from.
Right, yes, that
makes sense.
180,000-ish is actual revenue that Huntington Woods generated last year. And
it's
same with their
short-
expenses, those are actual expenses for
Short of
Huntington
having
Woods.
someone come in and do an actual market study, which is that's a big effort. Someone's gonna spend a lot of time and money doing an
Right.
actual. They would tell you how big your catchment area is, how many families you're likely to enjoying. They would take a look at the pool and say, for this pool design, here's what we think you generate. They would look at the gym space and say, how many hours a week can we program that? How much is drop-in time? But that, so I think at this point, all we could really do was do comparables to other communities around here as a thumbnail sketch. It's not gonna be buttoned down to the screws like a real marketing study would be, but I think it's good information to start with.
Just kind of a general idea to
Right.
paint that picture of what it looked like. But yeah, so Huntington Woods, for example, with their outdoor pool, we received, gosh, I don't think it might have been 10 years worth of information from them, and every year they had some sort of deficit. So they averaged around $50,000, which the general fund did kick in to help with those costs.
I guess going off the versatility point, you talked about how, being able to adapt some of these rooms or uses as time goes on. Is there a certain set or a certain setup between any of these type of plans that offer versatility in terms of the use of the buildings for like the community center, the pool? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, let's say hypothetically we wanted to do something like on a weekend a food truck rally, or farmer's market or something like that. Does the community center have a capability to do that as a way to get some sort of other revenue stream that can offset some of the
Yeah, I'd say at this point, we haven't designed the buildings yet, so what we said is 40 to 55,000 square feet. But we would certainly design these so that they'd be flexible to host events like that. You know, so a great example is when rock climbing became really popular. It was important to have a fitness area that was tall enough that you could put a rock climbing wall that wasn't just 8 feet tall, right? Because those became very popular and they were a way to generate revenue. So we would normally design these buildings so that the gym would have a space in it where we wouldn't have to have activities in there that would be big enough to do something like that. And it's a bit of a crystal ball thing because you kind of never know what the next big thing in recreation is, but you try to design the buildings to be very flexible so that when that next thing comes along, you guys can spend $30,000 and make another $20,000 every year in revenue, you know, and have more people come into the building. So until we really get to the design, I don't know what those specific things would be, but we would have a series of meetings when we got to that point and say, you know, here's what we see as really strong possibilities. Here's what we should do now, and here's what we should think about for the next 15 years or 20 years.
And to add on to that, Russ, one of the things that we talked about, and Jonathan knows this, is, I mean, because he's been designing buildings for a long time, is rooms that can be multi-use. So rooms that can be used as a meeting, but also as this, so we're not wasting space. You know, we talked early on about possibly having a banquet facility, but then it was like that could be wasted space. You could have a banquet for 250 people in a gym if you have a nice kitchen, you know, like, and you could use your gym for that. So we did talk about rooms where they could, you know, have multi, you know, like use. You could do senior stuff, you could do, you know, kids programming, things like that. So that was a concern in terms of that type of things. And then if you design a building that's flexible, I think that.
Because to me, that really factors into, you know, kind of what general fund cost is what
Sure.
at that point transferred. So.
You're gonna hard to come up with that general fund cost too.
Huh?
It's hard to come up with that general fund
Right.
cost. We don't really, it's hard to try to call other communities because everyone's is a little bit different. I mean, an outdoor pool and ice arena is a little bit easier to compare. But when you're talking about a community center, they're so different. There's no one answer for everybody. So that's why we try to use our current cost, which again, may not be the best estimate, but it's the best we had for now.
Yeah.
All I was gonna say is I do think it's very interesting that option 2, the community center, rec center, ice arena is the only absolute moneymaker. There's a lot of speculation that the ice arena will cost more, but as you can see, it actually will make money.
Not when you factor in 140 parking space deficit, where's that gonna come from?
You know, though, to me, parking's not that big of an issue. I mean, we are a walking community. Huntington Woods has like, what, 20 spots? I mean, their parking lot is so small.
Yeah.
I just don't see parking to be that big of an issue. We're always gonna be competing with the ball fields, the track meets, the
Wrong
soccer
person on that
meets.
one.
No, I'm being honest.
I know.
I mean, as it is now, I'll go to my son's track meet. I'm parked way down Oxford because there's no, the Anderson parking lot is completely filled.
Yeah.
So at least you can park at Anderson and walk through. And to me, parking is just not that big of an issue.
What's the deficit now compared to what it would be?
I mean, I don't think we really have a deficit right
No.
now. I mean, sometimes on Friday nights when we did have hockey and there was a football game, but that would pretty much be the only time. And then obviously this week on
Yeah.
birthday days. But I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think even when the ice arena was operating, we really had too much of a deficit because there would have to be something going on that was huge at the community center plus the ice arena. And that had been maybe once in a while on a Friday night, but that's about it, I would say.
How many spots do we have now?
What is the,
Wouldn't they be increasing
I
spots?
don't know the exact,
That
that's
is
the
what the
option,
increasing
yes,
spots, yeah.
yes.
It is, okay.
What's the current usage of the tennis courts?
They're heavily used,
That's
and that's a conversation that we've had often, but they're heavily used. They're one of our most used, recreation assets.
It's something that we do charge for?
No,
Oh, we don't?
no, there's no charge. The high schools use them, the middle school has a team, they use them, and then we have a tennis program that we do collect revenue, like people can sign up for, but people can go use them whenever they're open and want to use them, and there is no charge, they're free. But they're used till, the lights stay on until 11, and they're used spring, summer, and fall.
And where are other courts? Like I know
There's 2 at Harvard, there's 2 at Angel,
Do they have
there's
lights?
8 total. The Harvard ones have lights.
Question on parking. So the parking deficit, the 149 space deficit, that's all driven by the square footage of the building?
So your zoning ordinance requires different numbers for different things. So for spectator events at the arena, it's 1 per 3 seats. So we took 500 seats divided by 3. The gym for banquet, we could hold 400 for a banquet, so that's 1 per 3, I think. So we used the Berkeley zoning ordinance and said each of these facilities, the pool has also requirements. So we added those up and said, here's the total for when all these facilities are used. That's how we did it.
So then the 500 spectators for ice, is that like kind of a standard number, or where did that come from?
That's when it's at capacity, like for a regional game or something. So that's not going to happen often, you know. And again, so that's why I'm saying everything would have to be happening at the same time to have that deficit. You have to have a banquet and an arena, you know. But then
like
you
a
do
worst
have,
case scenario.
yeah, it's like a worst case scenario. It's a number that you're being conservative in case everything's going on with football.
But I guess where I'm going with that is, so for ice, do you have to have 500 spectators, or if we only
No.
had 300, is that going to be enough for what we do? Or?
Most of the time, it would be enough. Once in a while, it would not be enough. But most of the time, 300 would be enough.
And there's
And I
also
think the
variances,
hockey-
you know, zoning ordinances, people go for variances all the time on those because
Yes.
they're very kind of cut and dried, but they're not like a building code that you can't get a variance on life safety things. Parking, cities will say, yeah, we understand that we don't design the parking lot in church for Easter Sunday.
Right.
We design it for the 90% use case.
I guess I was trying to figure out, can you save space, like combined space between
Right.
the building and parking by reducing the spectators, so that footprint actually shrinks as well? You know,
It does,
not just
correct.
Not
Yes.
just the parking, but the
Right, the
itself.
building gets smaller too.
I mean, the thing is, parking is an issue in our city, period. I mean, if you've gone to a high school conference or a middle school conference, you are parking in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And it's just, look at where the teachers park. for
In
Pete's
the morning
sake.
with drop-offs or anything like that.
Oh my gosh, yes, I mean, parking is an issue literally no matter where we go. I go to the gym, I can't get a spot there, so to me, this is,
My
for me,
concern is-
it's not really an issue.
My concern is don't make it worse for the people that are in the neighborhood. If it's just
Yeah.
gonna be an overflow like it is now, that's fine. But you have to think about the people that live in the area.
Absolutely.
You know, because if it really is a big issue, but I mean, from the south side, you're saying that that's like a worst case. That's only gonna be those once in a blue moon times, which that's acceptable, I think, for anybody.
And I think it's probably happening now.
Yeah.
With, like I said, with baseball games and,
Sure.
you know, it probably happens now, and.
But if we get it proven, we might as well try, right?
Absolutely.
But you're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Two takeaways from that.
I don't
One,
think it should be a.
I would hesitate
Oh, yeah, I
reducing
think
the size of the building, especially something like the ice arena, reducing the number of spectators, because then you immediately start limiting the possibility for revenue generation
that's
for larger
true.
events.
Yeah.
The other item is, I live in Huntington Woods. We go to the pool. Both my kids swim in the swim team, and I can tell you, when swim meets come, it is the biggest parking nightmare you will ever get, because you have people who are not familiar with the streets, and they will, and this is an issue. You're adding 100+ cars, so everybody seems to drive separately, and it'll back up a full 2 city blocks, pretty much every side street that comes up. So it's, I agree, you don't design for the maximum, but if you have any chance of 2 events coming at once, you're going to start running into, you're definitely going to run into an issue.
So the question I have, so that option there does include a parking structure?
No,
No.
no, it just,
Oh, it
the
does
statement
not.
was that if you wanted to solve the parking deficit here,
Right.
you, without acquiring additional property to put more surface parking, you have to go up.
Okay.
And at the cost of building up,
Yeah.
don't, just call Royal Oak, find out how much it's costing.
Yeah, like the parking deficit, and I'd call them the mama bear schemes, are not so much, you know. But once you start taking up more footprint with 3 facilities, rec center, pool, and ice arena, you've eaten up more space, need more parking, and you've got less room for parking. So that's kind of the killer one there in terms of site. I'd say the other ones, I think you can be creative, and we can say, yeah, we can kind of make that work. This one I would really be concerned about on this site, of making that actually livable, you know, that everyone wouldn't just hate it with the amount of parking you have.
I have a couple questions. So you talked about earlier about as the building ages, you know, the revenue and the deficit amount for the general fund will change. Do you have any idea, like between the option 1's with no ice arena, options 2 with the ice arena, is there any idea how much those deficit numbers may change as, let's say, 5 years out, 10 years out? Like how much?
I don't know
Okay.
on the ice arena in particular, but in general with buildings of this scale, you can assume about a 50-year depreciation. So if you straight line it, it's about, if you do a straight line depreciation, it's about 2% of the value of the building per year should be set aside. Now, obviously, in the first few years, it's like a brand new car. You're under warranty. You're happy, nothing's going wrong. If you don't start setting aside that money within the first 5 to 8 years, the little things start to add up. And by the time you get to the 30 to 40-year range, you are in the deficit, especially, again, ice arena, indoor pool, you're going to be in the deficit range where it's going to be very difficult to get the money to fix it. It will be a take it down for a while to fix it up kind of thing. So that's why we always recommend starting with an ongoing fund to make sure that there's maintenance money in a rainy day fund for when it does break.
Okay, that helps. I have a few other questions. Did you ever consider an option where you keep the same footprint with nice arena and Park Community Center? Is that like keeping the tennis courts as is, or? I don't think I've seen an option like that presented. Did you guys explore that, or?
Where it keeps basically the same footprint?
Yeah. Is that not, like, assuming it's not feasible since it wasn't presented, but I wasn't sure.
Well, the ice arena, for the most part, is slightly larger, but roughly the same.
Yeah, very
Okay.
similar. Yeah, but the community center is very different than what you have right now. You know,
Yeah.
you've got kind of small spaces right now. This is a much, probably on the order of 5 times as big as what you have right now for your community center.
Well, they're all
Okay.
2 stories too, right? The community center, all, it's 2 stories.
Typically, we would, because normally we want to have a track that's elevated, so you're not crossing it all the time with people. So normally, it's more efficient on the community center, as long as it's not like a little 10,000 square foot center, to make them 2 floors.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
important. And all of these community centers you see here, they are either partially or fully 2-story. If you were to take that to a single-story facility, you immediately, nothing works.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Especially
footprint
that
gets
one.
bigger.
not enough room.
Yeah. And the ice, is this assuming there's a studio ice and a green ice? Okay. And what about the horseshoe pits? I don't know how popular they are. Is there room for those and any?
I'd say Baby Bear, we could put horseshoe pits, Papa
Okay.
Bear.
Yeah, okay.
Well, one of the neat,
Yeah, they're really used.
I guess one of the neat opportunities
All right,
that
birthday,
you,
birthday, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of them,
what,
right.
looking for a good example.
Sometimes they have it, it's like it has
This-
been used and like it's not. They could
If you look at something like option 3A or even here in option 1, you know, you've got that 12 towns drain that runs right through here. It gives you that 50-foot, you can't build anything permanent on it easement. But in this case, for example, if you can enter parking from Oxford without having to go up Robina? Yes. The opportunity to actually, you may have a vehicular entrance here that gets you into the parking. This could actually be green space.
Yeah.
So it could be play area, park area, you could incorporate the horseshoes into that. So there is flexibility. It's sort of the only benefit of that drain easement that's running right through the middle of the property.
Who holds the easement?
The 12 town
That
drain.
county-
the-
county
yeah, the
drain-
county
Water
drain-
Resource Commission.
The county.
And we're talking 84 inch?
96 inch.
96
It's huge,
inch,
so
yeah.
8 foot, you're not moving
Pipe.
that baby.
That's probably
No, I
20
wouldn't
feet
so.
long.
I'd like to know how happy we were to receive that baby.
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
It sure did alleviate the flooding of our basement.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So you're proposing to have entrances and exits from Catalpa, Sunny Knoll, and Oxford? So won't that bring traffic into the neighborhood?
There are opportunities for that. It doesn't have to be,
Okay.
but the way that these lay out, it can be set up that way. It would behoove a traffic study. And it may be something where it's, the primary entrance is always off of Catalpa. But It's, well, I guess one benefit would be if you did enter in off of Sunny Knoll, you'd have few people who get to the end of Sunny Knoll and go, oh, darn it. Turn around and go back.
We would probably have limited access except for off Catalpa. So after a football game, you might want to open those gates up and let everyone clear out quickly.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
90% of the time, you might keep those closed and have it only off Catalpa. And that'd be easy enough to do.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Corona is gonna be a big virtual block too.
I have a question. On the ice arena, you guys projected income for only 8 months. Most ice arenas newer, they're 12-month facilities. Is there a reason why you were thinking it would be only 8 months use?
You know, I know that ice arenas normally like to go down for a couple months at least to help alleviate the permafrost problem. They want to, so when you have an ice arena that stays open year round, what happens is the center tends to heave and starts to go up on you. So I know that they like to at least bring them down for a couple of months. So I don't know, like the newest one I know of around here, Viking Arena, I don't know if they are a full year or if they go down for a couple of months. But the last couple I did Lindell, I know Lindell, at least when they first opened, went down for a couple of months a year, just for that reason.
Yeah, but you're right. Usually it is about 2 months, but they're still open. They're open a little longer than 8 months.
Yeah, that could be adjusted. I think that maybe was a conservative.
Only
look
because
at
I
it.
know my kids skate all year round
Yeah.
and even go open skate, and there's ice arenas open at all.
Right.
I mean, there's not a month that we can't find an ice arena.
That's just what we operate currently, so
Right.
we kind of just went with
Okay.
that since that's what we do. But to your point, yes, if we actually had better insulation than what we do currently, it would definitely be a possibility.
Then could we use it for those months that it's down? Like could we put turf down? Like will we have fire suppression? Could we do roller hockey?
I mean, I think a new arena would have, yeah, I mean, it would be up to code, it would have
Continuously
adequate.
bring in.
Or you could do things like farmer's market or to Ross's, things like that, to Ross's point, things that we cannot do currently. I don't know if turf would make sense for like the 2-3 months, but I think other things, right, but I think there's other things that we could do, absolutely, that we can't currently do, yeah.
So are there other areas in the city that we could transfer the tennis courts to? Because I feel like everything else pretty much should be at that location, but if we were to still keep those,
Not really.
no?
There's no land. The only possibility would be like the Oxford Merchants area, and the park plan that's been developed did not incorporate tennis courts, because obviously that was a year and a half ago before this discussion. And so we talked about that at length. So no, I mean that should be a consideration for the committee, that there's really no other land to put those courts.
So even moving down to 4, do you think that would be tough to do? It sounds like they're.
I think it would be tough. Yeah, if you're, are all 6 used? Yes. So, I mean, I think that would be.
When the weather's getting decent, you drive by there all hours of the night, I mean, well, up to 11. I mean, the lights are on in every court still.
And even on Harvard, that one,
Yeah,
that-
people use,
this
people,
time of
the
year,
Harvards
it's
use
full.
more than,
Yeah.
yeah.
Were there any covenants for the 6 tennis courts? Any covenants that restricted what could be done with the 6 sports?
Covenants, do you mean like grant, a
From
grant?
the state? with the
Yeah,
state
so we
grant?
do have a DNR grant. Basically, it would make any other future applications very difficult to pass, because when you take grant assisted land and then it's no longer used for that purpose, then you automatically lose multiple points. It doesn't do anything to you retroactively, but it would going forward, yes.
Even with like option A, we move the we still have 6 tennis courts.
If you move them and you still have them in your community, then that's different, yes, than that.
But there is no other land in Rico to have 6 tennis courts anywhere.
No. I mean, if you look in the community, I mean, it doesn't exist.
Well, it's the tennis, I mean, it's the tennis team.
Well, and it's a good, yeah, I was gonna say, it's a good location for the schools. for
Well,
the-
no, the tennis team needs 6 courts
Well, no, it's
in one
beyond the
spot.
tennis team.
Right, I mean, that's just, or, I mean, other than maybe definitely towards the other option.
There's no other, I guess I should say, there's no other land that the city owns that we could use. I mean, obviously, if you think about the city, there's land, but even that is scarce, but that we,
Go with that cost, just to buy it, when it develop.
It's just understand what that's.
John, can you talk to those soft costs?
Also, the soft costs are just a way, it's just a multiplier. So you take the construction dollars that you're gonna pay the contractor, you're gonna have engineering fees, architectural fees, permit fees, surveys, testing, all that kind of stuff. We normally cut, it's normally 30 to 35% of construction costs. So until we actually do estimates, you don't know what that number is, so we use 33%. So that covers financing, it's a whole list of things, legal costs that aren't part of the construction dollars.
Do we know, I don't know if you guys would know or not, what's the timeline for each one of these would, I mean, I know you guys aren't the construction.
Yeah.
But, I mean, do you have an estimate, you know, would one take a year and one could take 3 years, or?
It really depends on the scope. I mean, we could make best guesses. I mean, community center building.
Without a pool, probably 12 to 14 months. With the pool, probably 15 to 16 months. The pool's the longest lead time on these projects. Pools, you have to kind of build the building around it and then kind of come in and dig the pool. There's a whole lot of stuff to happen after the building gets in close. So pools take a long time. But the whether you have an ice arena or not really shouldn't impact the schedule, because that'll be a much quicker turnaround than the community center piece, and it can be done at the same time. Now, you know, the fact that you've got a ice arena right now that's not being used means that you don't have to phase this thing and keep that in operation. So I don't think construction time from 1 to 4 wouldn't be a whole lot different. They're all going to be probably, you know, maybe 15 to 18 month kind of periods of time. And ahead of that, design time.
There's, design time in front of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's 15 to 18 months potentially. What kind of impact does that have outside of, maybe this is more a city question, but what kind of impact does that have outside of option, well, I guess it would be 1B. Will that have for, you know, everything that goes on in the community center?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how long we get to be in there. I mean, but if you're talking it's demolished or away, I mean, it has a huge impact, right? Because that's all of the programs that we run and everything, and, you know, the rentals and everything else that we do, all the meetings that take place in there every week. And I think the city, we've done a little exploring at temporary facilities, you know, sort of these pop-up facilities. Costs are pretty high on those. So I think that you're looking at possibly renting a space somewhere where we could do some of that programming, but some of it would go down for that time and wouldn't be able to exist.
An important thing to remember, any of the options that show the community center near Catalpa, the existing community center could stay in operation and actually allow you to move in. It extends construction time because, for example, if you were to do this arrangement, you might be able to build the ice arena, get started on that at the same time as this, and then move out of there. Odds are, though, for just simplicity, you'd want to vacate this so you've got room to work around it. You might actually look at it and say, we're going to build this first, move in, then vacate this, so you've now automatically extended the time, but you've eliminated the issue of losing facility during the construction. It's something that you have to evaluate again when you make the decision of which direction you want to head. Work out an implementation plan, a phasing plan, how to move through it, and then see the cost impacts of that, because it is typically cheaper, it's almost always cheaper to build everything at once. But if it has an impact on your revenue, that's something you want to take into account as you move forward and make those decisions.
That's a good point too, because the other challenge with the site is during construction, usually you need about 50% of the footprint area as a laydown area for the contractor. They're going to have lots of building materials stored, trailers, people parking, cranes craning stuff in. So the other thing is, like Patrick said, the easiest thing would be to take that whole building down at once and give them room to do that. If you wanted to keep the community center intact on the north side and just take down the ice arena, you could do it, except for it's really going to pinch the contractors in terms of where they're going to have laydown areas and staging areas. It's going to be pretty tough on your site, because you're kind of like stem to stern on that site with that ice arena. You're kind of right against the property line and the drain on the other side. There's not a whole lot of room around that building.
you said you had looked at possibly renting some pop-up space or whatnot. We also, or is it even feasible to work something out with the schools to use gymnasiums and things like that in the evenings when they're not used?
Yeah, so we've definitely talked about that as a staff. We have not gotten to those conversations with the school district, but that would probably be where we would start first, because that seems to make the most sense financially. It's still in the, in the city, so that would probably be where we would start. Yep.
The gyms are staying pretty busy though, don't they? At night, wouldn't you say?
The
I mean, I
middle
feel like when
school,
I
high
went-
school,
I mean,
the elementary
elementary's
school
not
gyms
so
are
much.
a lot
Elementary's
easier.
just more,
Yeah.
you'll get Boy Scouts once
Yeah.
a month or
Right.
whatever, Girl Scouts kind of stuff.
We
here
have
and there.
library maybe for meetings or.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely other options in the city that I think we could look at.
And I'm sorry, Teresa, is there that same potential detriment to future grants if we reduce tennis courts to 4?
I believe so, because you're changing it, and, we did receive land water conservation grant for those tennis courts, so I believe that it would change the makeup a little bit. I don't know, I can't tell you how much, what the scoring is, but, I mean, you are changing it.
John, when you first started out, you talked about a couple other options other than what was originally discussed, because you had conversations with, and this was the part I was unclear on, community leaders, or
Well,
was it?
yeah, I mean, with the subcommittee we were working with, that we kind of met with to kind of find out just what are the options we're looking at. And there was originally a proposal, like I said, there was options 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they turned into 1, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and 4, I think. Because as we looked at it, the options that had pools were pretty interchangeable. We originally had one option that had indoor, one that had outdoor, but they were interchangeable. We could say we could do a community center with an indoor pool or an outdoor pool, with an ice arena or without an ice arena. So we looked at it both ways. That's why that expanded to 6.
In addition to that, we also felt very strongly that it's very hard to find a community center unless you knew where the community center is. So we felt that pulling it up to Catalpa, so on 3A and 1A, that we felt very strongly to anchor the community center on Catalpa. And so that was another cause that's why you see the 3A, 3B, 1A, and 1B.
And I know there's been, there's been talk previously about the current community center and making improvements as opposed to demolishing it and starting over, which is what each one of these is. Was that given any consideration? Is that even an option?
I'll let Justin or Patrick, I know they were involved in the earlier study.
Yeah, when we looked at the buildings during the facility condition assessment we did about a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago, the limitations of the current community center, there are below-grade structural issues. The building is, in certain areas, physically pulling apart. There are insulation issues, there are water infiltration issues, things that really pushed against that. It became an issue where if you spend the money to fix it, it's like it would be a nice, shiny, new 74 Chrysler Cordova. You're getting a building that was challenged and has aged and not aged well. And it's really, the way it was built, a lot of load-bearing walls, that level of flexibility to really make you competitive with other communities wasn't there. The ice arena, the simplest way to put it is it has outlived its
I wasn't even asking.
Community center.
No, it's been
Just a
discussed
community
before,
center.
so that was, yeah.
And I think another challenge would be with the footprint that it takes up, we wouldn't be able to add a second story to it anyway. I mean, and I think that's probably one of our greatest challenges is the footprint that we're working with. So if we have the ability to go up, I don't think we really have a choice with that if we're, it seems like it.
And that's actually a good point. I thought to mention that because of the location of the ice arena to the south, the easement to the west, and there's also the easement on Sunny Knoll, because there's a drain line that runs there, not as large, but still large. That building is hemmed in. You cannot expand it in any direction at all.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Any questions?
I don't see why not.
Great. I know one gentleman on the committee suggested salt water as a cheaper option, and I was wondering if that was considered.
Salt water for?
The pool.
Yeah. Bringing the
About
cost down
salt
versus
water-
using chlorine.
Salt water instead of straight chlorine.
In terms
I've
of,
never heard of it being cheaper. I know they do a lot of those down in Florida. Our pool consultant, I've done about probably a dozen pools with Bill Robertson, and we've never actually been able to swing the saltwater thing. It's always been a part of the discussion for the last 10 years or so. But I've not done it, so I don't know that it would be cheaper to do that. I mean, there's lots of ways, like ozone systems now, to help with taking some of the chlorination out of the pool and taking some of the chloramines out. But I'm not sure about, in terms of saltwater pools, if the cost is less or not. I can't imagine it's a big difference.
I
really
think that,
can't
well, yeah, it
imagine
was
it's-
ongoing maintenance, and
Yeah.
that was.
Yeah,
what
there
the
is, you know, there's a lot, pools are, to use Bill's word, pools can be nasty. I mean, the chemicals you have to use to chlorinate pools in order to put bromine in are really caustic, nasty things, you know, and they're very, you really have to have a good pool operator because you can get yourself in a whole lot of trouble from a health standpoint with pools. So I know that that Bill likes to try to use ozone because you still have to use a little bit of chlorine or bromine to take the chloramine, or take what's the word I'm looking for? The germs out of the water, basically. But you have to be measurable, but you can use the ozone to do that, and it's not nearly as caustic and hard on your lungs like chlorine and bromine are. That was my attempt at technical talk that Bill usually does.
So a lot of information, a lot of options. Is there any information that wasn't presented that anybody can think of that we might want to ask for? You know, in regards to these options or other options we haven't discussed?
I think it's very well done. I think there's a lot of options here.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's a great idea. Take a short break for, say, 5 minutes. Go ahead. All right, we want to get back to it. So we can certainly have a little discussion tonight if we want. One of the things I wanted to recommend was, since we did get so much information here tonight, we'll take some time to digest it. We'll ask the city, and I believe they have the numbers ready already, but maybe before the start of our next meeting, talk about the per household implications of each of these options. And then also, because we still have on the table the City Hall municipal building issue, have a little refresher since it's been a little time since we've met and talked about it. We should really, I shouldn't say we should really, but we have discussed it in the past, tackling that issue as a whole. So, that makes sense to everybody? Mm-hmm. Anybody have any comments on the presentation tonight or things they want to make sure we consider as we think about this in the next week or two?
The two things that struck me is how expensive all of this is. The original estimates that the city had provided were $14 million. That gives us basically one option here. So I was a little taken aback by that. And I'm looking forward to the grudge match of hockey players versus tennis players that we're setting up. I think that should be great. I think
You know, my kid plays both sports.
You're gonna fight it yourself.
You have one option.
And he brings up a good point, though, really.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
talked about this when we first started this group, and we should remember it going forward, right? That we should have an open mind to consider all options. And, you know, I don't play hockey. Nobody in my house plays hockey. And if I ever get on ice skates again, you all better watch out. So I don't have any vested interest in the ice arena. I think it does add, you know, to the fabric of the community, as do all these other things we talked about too. So I think just again,
Well,
say,
like the point
think
that
about
they
the open
said,
mind,
you
right?
know, too, is that it's not, that most communities is not a revenue generating thing, it's quality of life for your
That's
community.
right.
It's what it's attracting people to want to be here, so.
I do love the idea of more visibility to the community center,
Yeah.
to the community center, bring it to Catalpa. I think that's
I
fantastic.
lived here for almost a year before I found the community
I
center.
didn't
I'm not gonna
know
lie.
this. Until I started volunteering, I didn't even know it was dedicated.
I mean, my kids went to Rogers, I live 4 blocks from there, I really didn't go much
Right.
over on that side, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting to see the neighbors around live next to tennis courts or a building.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would think tennis courts, but you do get people outside, you might hear the racket. I don't know, it'll be interesting.
Jim?
Well, you know, when you put this down, you're free with the per household implications. It isn't just $302 a month, or a season for a pool membership. That's one part of it.
Yeah.
Because you know, it's bad enough that playing sports in some school districts right now, parents are going to cough up $1,500 a kid. But you've got 3 things that this proposal generates. You've got bond payments, increased property taxes. You've got membership fees, the programs you want to go into. And you've got money coming from the general fund to make up the deficit.
Yeah.
So it's just not one little piece of the puzzle. And you put it very well. When we first started all these meetings, one of the things that attracted you to Berkeley was its low tax rate.
I suspect that's why they don't want money to it.
Pardon?
I suspect that's why none of us.
Why I don't. That was it. I mean,
The tax rates are still, they're going to be one of the lowest they've been in the past 5 years this fiscal year. So again, just something to keep in mind in your discussions is.
There's nothing wrong with it being that low.
Oh, sure. Just trying to let you know it is the lowest it's been
But you
in
have to also
several
look
years,
at,
so.
and we'll get into this more later, but you have to also look to what I have a problem with tax-funded facilities being revenue generators and being entered into it from that point of view from the very beginning. If we're gonna do that, then let's just take the land and bring in somebody and let them build it.
Well, I think that was one thing that I appreciated from the handouts that Darshell gave us at the beginning of the meeting, was it did give us all those cost options on each of those different options, but then separately, it talked about, it had the impact of the general fund, and it talked about revenue as opposed to annual maintenance. So if revenue can offset annual maintenance, I think that's
And
where
that pool has to be maintained where there is one.
Oh, absolutely.
People, the same thing with ice rink.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely, absolutely, and then that's,
This is not an easy question. Everybody would like to see it because down the scale, it might not be at the top of the scale for quality of life issues, but it's certainly in there. But if you pick up a paper and read it all, you can see that the state is unsure of its revenue now, and that's just going to trickle down. And their money isn't out there. Disposable income is not as great when everybody wants a piece of that pie. So I think there's a lot of questions to be answered here. thing that keeps hitting me is that Royal Oak seems to have great quality of life, and they don't have a community center.
The only question I have though is that I think we all have to ask ourselves, is the status quo acceptable or not? And I think in light of the fact that the ice arena is not operational and the dilapidation of the community center, I almost feel like a choice among these options needs to be made. At least that's my gut feeling because of the condition that a lot of these facilities are. And
Royal Oak may not have a community center, but they have a senior center and they have an ice arena.
Farmers market.
They have the Boys and Girls Club. They have other things that
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
offset
and
that.
I think that it's been repeated multiple times in here that we're not worried about the work.
That's-
Yeah.
I mean, you even
So-
look at the tubs and like, I mean, they've got a lot more space. I know.
To Tim's point, you're right, we are one of the most livable communities, right? We take good pride in that, but it's for different reasons. And some of it are the infrastructure we have and the programs, like Parks and Rec, and some of it is our own taxes, right? And so there's that's part of our job is to find out where that mix is gonna be and what's worth it.
By the way, somebody asked a ways back about how the ice rink was built. And I heard the story not long ago from somebody who was around in city government at that time.
I think we talked about it in here.
And the
yeah.
story about what went on behind the scenes is absolutely fascinating. And talk about government malfeasance.
Oh, we can talk about that on.
Yeah.
Bust.
Yeah, I think to build upon, Tim and Dan's point a little bit is that I think that we have to make the decision not only as city administration, city council, residents, we have to be willing to spend the money and put the money aside for the eventual maintenance costs. And because my guess is at some point at the very beginning, that hockey arena was, it was on the plus side. And it just did not stay that way. And it was allowed to, eventually deteriorate. And so I think there has to be that buy-in from all three parts to understand that if this is something that the city actually wants and the residents actually want, then they need to, put the money where the mouth is and save some money to cover those maintenance costs. Because otherwise, it's gonna be 30 years from now. and it's a different attitude.
Right, but that's for any option, that's even for option
Yes.
1A and 1B,
It
I'm
is.
sorry,
It
because
is.
that hasn't happened.
No, it has not
So
happened.
that is even if, whatever,
It has
so.
not, but those maintenance costs are certainly gonna be a lot lower for something like
Right,
community
I
center
agree, but
than
it
for an ice
still
rink.
has to
So,
be,
but
or
yes.
like what they were saying, adding something new or different, they have to
Mhm.
keep that, change
That's a great
everything
point. And
different.
did I not hear him say that the plan for these buildings would be a 50-year building?
Yeah.
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 The ice arena was a 20-year, right?
See,
That
the
lasted-
depreciation was
seems
really
like
50
50
years.
years.
This is, I could say so that this one is 100. I mean, that's the plan.
Yeah, wasn't it 50 also assuming we've attained it too, though, right? So
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
also assuming we spend all that money, so if we don't, maybe it's gonna be 20, 30 years.
So she
Like
said it was
something
like
we'll include in
2%
our
for every year.
recommendation.
Yeah.
For the first few years, you don't really have that, but as long as they're
But then you
maintaining
build it
that
up.
2% right from the beginning, then you don't
Yeah.
have a surplus. when
My
it's-
mind keeps going back too, though, to what can we pass? What will we
Yeah,
pass?
that does too.
Because, you spend this time and a lot of money on, all this different things and, this happened before and nothing got passed, so.
And we have roads, and we haven't talked about City Hall yet, that might be more, and are someone just gonna refuse to vote for all three anyway? I kind of feel that, if they're thinking there's, like, I'm not voting for all of them. Like, yeah, for sure.
All right, next meeting, Darshella, we have availability in 2 weeks?
Yes. What's 2 weeks?
You're right, I should look at that.
Business and council conflict.
Sorry?
Business city council,
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Is Monday the best day?
I think, I've heard Monday's the best day, overwhelmingly from the group, right?
Sure, it's fine.
Is there any other days that are?
Yeah, I'm flexible, but.
You do the 12th.
I don't know
I think Mondays are the best, so maybe the 12th,
Yeah, I think so.
that would work.
Could we try to give ourselves homework, like in the sense that maybe rank our own personal preferences between now and then, or?
I like that.
Great idea.
I think it's a good idea. Then at least we don't have to right off the bat get into it.
Should we email that to you beforehand? You can kind of compile that, or what's the easiest way to do that?
I think that's a great idea, because I hate to call out individuals in the middle of a meeting, right? So, yeah, if you want to rank those, and we'll talk about them as a.
So do you want us to rank the options in a, or do you want us to rank things, or how do you want us?
Rank them in the order of preference. And then we can
Will the
take
slides
the
be
pile
sent
number.
to us?
That would be a great.
I'm sorry?
Those slides, will they be sent to us?
He
I-
said that those had to
No.
be approved, I thought.
I took
You
photos
can't
of each
access
of
that
them.
stuff. Good.
Good.
Email them to
He
everyone.
wouldn't let us take pictures.
Oh, he did?
Because I'm like, why don't we have
People
people
that are
there?
absent today.
Oh, I took pictures.
It's
Okay.
probably because the designs are,
Well, he said he
Yeah.
wanted them to be approved by city council, I don't know.
Well, I think
I
one
don't
thing
know.
we want to remember too, and is
Is-
that none of these ideas are
Nothing set in
The
stone.
idea.
set in stone,
Yeah.
right? So these are just ideas, and there may be other ideas that weren't on any of these slides, so maybe it was just kind of protecting against the perception.
Did you see the pictures?
I watched that.
Just taking a selfie.
Is that what you were doing with your phone up like this?
Not like that.
Definitely did as if they're done.
The 12th, June 12th,
If it's
6:30.
posted online, but we just have them.
place. Jen, would you like to do the honors?
We done?
Adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Anybody opposed? See you on the 12th, thanks guys. Email me those preferences.
Can I send you the photos, Tim, and you can forward those to everybody?
Thank you.
Thank you.